Where's my test pattern? Are you still there? My camera went off and I got a message saying that there was transmission difficulties. But it looks like a lot of you have continued to watch. Is that right? Can somebody send me a comment to let me know if we're live? Seems to be working okay now, someone said. Okay, thank you. Should I start at the very beginning? I think I will. With the Kabbalistic autopsy scene. The location is the operating room of a morgue. The rabbi's body is on a table. There's music, organ music, the hymn, Abide With Me. The rabbi says in voiceover, then shall the dust return to earth as it was, and the spirit return to God who gave it. Music stops and the rabbi narrates as the camera slowly pans his body from toe to head. For modesty's sake, and for modesty's sake, his genital area and the genital area of his tattoos are marked off with black tape. I really look natural, don't I? This is the dissection room of the Kabbalistic morgue, and I volunteered my body for a little demonstration of the 4 parts of the soul. Because humans are made in the image of deity, we reflect the same dynamics as our huge and eternal counterpart. Each of us is a 4-story Yod-He-Vav-He, with our own little Atzilith, Braya, Yetzirah, and Asaya right here inside us. 4 parts of our soul, which Kabbalists refer to, starting at the top, the Chai, that's C-H-I-A-H, like Chia, the Neshama, Ruach, and Nephesh. Like the Kabbalistic worlds, the 3 lower parts of the soul are just distorted images of our real identity, the Chai, or the life force. The lowest part of the soul, which corresponds to Asaya, the material world, is called the Nephesh, the animal vitality, or the animal soul. The physical body is not really the Nephesh, but the veil of the Nephesh. I call it Nephesh crust. As science advances, we learn more and more about the neural, electrical, magnetic nature of the body. It gets harder to determine where the crust leaves off and the Nephesh begins. Let's just say, for starters, that the Nephesh is that primitive level of consciousness that we share with the animal kingdom. Our instincts, our primitive appetites, emotions, and sex drive are survival mechanisms. We can observe the Nephesh manifest most clearly in individuals because of unfortunate circumstances are deprived of the proper function of the rational mind. We can also spot it in ourselves in moments of blind rage, or when we're so frightened of a fire we jump out of the window of a 16-story building. Or when we get so horny, we forget this fling will ruin our lives. Wild and dangerous as the Nephesh can be, it makes each one of us complete. An accurate reflection of the greater spiritual reality. It's where we live. It's our personal Asaya. And every angel in the celestial realms would give its right wing to own one. The scene changes. A morgue doctor in surgical clothes moves into the picture. She takes a scalpel from the instrument tray and moves it toward the rabbi's head. Camera zooms in on the neck area as the scalpel blade nears the throat, the camera moves away before any incision is made. The rabbi continues. The part of the soul that corresponds to Yetzirah, that would be, remember, Yetzirah, number 2. So the part in the soul that corresponds to Yetzirah is the Ruach. It's called Ruach, the intellect. Just as the physical body is the crust of the Nephesh forms the crust of the Ruach. The scene changes, scene 2. Medical laboratory, complete with Bunsen burners, glass tubing, and electronic instruments. There's special effects. The rabbi's severed head is sitting up on its neck facing the camera. It's resting in a shallow laboratory pan half filled with liquid. Several tubes lead from the liquid to bubbling beakers. The rabbi's head opens its eyes and now becomes the narrator. Rabbi's head. Don't try this at home. This is just a cheap trick to introduce us to the next part of our soul, the Ruach. Above the Nephesh, corresponding to the world of Yetzirah and the Vav of the Tetragrammaton, is the Ruach, the intellect, the vehicle of self-awareness. Now, obviously, my head and brain are not the real Ruach, because all organic things are too gross to qualify for Ruachhood. But as you look at my head here in this laboratory pan, I want you to think. If your feet and legs were amputated, you would still be you, right? And if your arms were amputated, wouldn't you still consider yourself you? Provided science could keep you alive, how much of your body could be amputated or removed before you would lose your you-ness? You might answer you would still be you as long as you could think and maintain consciousness of yourself. But that's the big Ruach lie. Thinking and consciousness are not the same thing. Not the same thing at all. The Ruach part of your soul monopolizes your attention to such a degree that you identify yourself completely with the thinking process. Descartes fell for this hook, line, and sinker when he said, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Ultimately, the real you doesn't need the think part of the equation to maintain consciousness. Even if you could no longer think, there would still be you. There would still be consciousness. The Ruach part of your soul, however, is incapable of grasping that subtle fact. It is unable to transcend itself to imagine a self without thinking. Like a narcissistic and domineering mother, Ruach consumes your full attention, causing you to think about life rather than live it. Seek understanding rather than enlightenment. Comprehension rather than bliss. The scene changes. The morgue doctor again moves into the picture. She picks up a power drill. The camera zooms in on the rabbi's head as the doctor places the drill tip directly to his forehead in the area of the third eye. The camera moves away before the drilling begins. The rabbi's head continues his narration over the sound of the drilling. The part of the soul that corresponds to Braya, the creative world, and the Hay of the Tetragrammaton is called the Neshama, the seat of our transcendent awareness. Just as the physical body is the crust of the Nephesh, and the Nephesh forms the crust of the Ruach forms the crust of the Neshama. Special effects. The camera enters the darkness of a neatly drilled hole in the rabbi's head. The rabbi continues. Practitioners of ceremonial magic often argue with each other over the question, are angels, demons, spirits, and other magical phenomena objective or subjective realities? Do they exist outside of us, or are they just in our heads? The answer is simple. The spirits and every other denizen of objective reality are in your head. Only you have no idea how infinitely huge your head is. Scene 3. Location, the interior of the rabbi's head. A cozy den with a modest fireplace before which we find a golden retriever asleep on a braided rug, and the rabbi reclined in an easy chair. He's calmly smoking a pipe. His eyes are closed, but the brow of his forehead is furrowed as if he was in profound thought or a mystic reverie. He never opens his eyes, but continues his narration in voiceover. The Neshama, the Thomas Edison archangel part of your soul, is the soul intuition. It is our transcendent awareness, that part of us that rises above the thinking process and vibrates in greater harmony with the ultimate reality. We can't really understand the Neshama because the machinery of our thoughts is based in Ruach and can only take in so much information before going into overload and breaking down. For our illustration here, we view my Neshama as being centered inside my physical skull. It may or may not be centered there, but there is one thing for certain. The Neshama part of our soul reaches infinitely farther than the confines of our physical body. As a matter of fact, for all intent and purposes, the scope of the Neshama is infinite. It is in touch with energies and levels of consciousness our Ruach would not understand, even if it could conceive of them. Now, we've all heard stories of mothers separated from their children by hundreds or thousands of miles, knowing instinctively when their young ones are in danger. This is because at the traumatic moment, is this because at the traumatic moment, the child emits some kind of signal that's telegraphed across the ocean to the mother? No. It's because the mother's Neshama is so huge, the child could never escape it, no matter how many miles separate their physical bodies. A mother's intuition is only a very primitive example of this transcendent awareness. It's clear to me that if it were possible to understand the scope and potential of the human Neshama, we could solve many of the mysteries surrounding the so-called supernatural events of religious traditions and the unanswered questions of modern psychic research. The highest part of the soul that corresponds to Atzilith, the archetypal world, is the next one. The Yod part of both of our buildings. Here it's coming up. The highest part of the soul corresponds to Atzilith, the archetypal world, and the Yod of the Tetragrammaton called the Chai, or it looks like Chia. Chai like l'chaim, to life. Okay. It's the undiluted life force itself and our true identity. All the other parts of the soul are veils of the chai. Just the physical body, one more time. Just as the physical body is the crust of the Nephesh, and the Nephesh forms the crust of the Ruach, and the Ruach forms the crust of the Neshama forms the crust of the Chai. If we found that the Neshama was hard to talk about, our Chai is even more challenging. Okay, the special effects once more. The camera backs up to reveal that the entire scene of the interior of the rabbi's head is only an image on a television screen. A hand holding a remote clicker comes into view. The hand aims at the clicker at the television and pushes the button. The television screen changes to the blank and snowy images found in between channels. Over the white noise of the blank screen, the rabbi continues his voiceover narration. We've all seen this snowy image and heard this irritating hiss whenever we turn a television channel that isn't carrying a broadcast signal. Astronomers now tell us that what we are seeing and hearing is nothing more or less than the radiation echo of the Big Bang itself, which emanates hauntingly from the empty space between the stars. If we personified this imaginable energy as a god, it would dwarf to insignificance all the lesser forces and beings in the celestial family. Such is the nature of the Chai when compared to other parts of the soul. Yod, He, Vav, He. Adzaleth, Braya, Yetzirah, Asaya. Chai, Neshama, Ruach, Nephesh. The Nephesh lives, remember the Nephesh is the animal soul. The Nephesh lives but is not self-aware. The Ruach is self-aware, and aware the self is living. The Neshama is the essence of life's awareness, but the Chai is life itself, the soul's true identity. If there is any purpose for our incarnations, it is to perfectly integrate the four parts of our soul so that we can function as perfect units of the Supreme Consciousness and uninhibitedly manifest that consciousness on all planes of existence. Special effects, the hand holding the clicker comes again into view. The hand aims the clicker at the television and pushes the button. The television goes dark, except for the tiny white dot in the center of the screen. The white dot slowly fades to black. And that's the end of that chapter. Thank you for putting up with our false start and everything. And I hope to see you tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, be good to yourself and be good to each other. And do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. Have a good